Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky here, and today I'm very excited to welcome Heather Younger. Heather, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So Heather, you're a keynote speaker, two-time author, CEO, and founder of Employee Fanatics, an employee engagement and leadership development consulting firm. You've been featured in many publications, Forbes, Huffington Post, CMS Wire. Your clients include Harvard Business Review, California State University, Fullerton, First Bank, and a whole bunch of others. Before we kind of get to all that, I want to go back a little bit in time. How did you get into the world of consulting and employee engagement? Like, what were you doing before you started your company?
Well, it's interesting. I started my company as a side hustle, and actually it was only based upon kind of demand. So I was working for a company. Gosh, I'm trying to think of exactly how this started because you can kind of go back to be thinking about it. I've been full-time in my business now for about 3.5 years. So full-time consulting for 3.5 years. And then it was a side hustle for a couple of years before that while I was working in another organization, running organizational development for them and writing my first book. And my head was spinning. It was a lot going on. I felt I was actually traveling, working my full-time job, taking a lot of days off there because they gave me a lot of days. So I would take those days and go travel to clients in between my work days, right? And then come back, be doing the work, having to fulfill some of the work, the client work, and then of course writing that book at the same
Yeah.
time on employee loyalty. And I have 4 kids, and I got to the point where I felt like my head was going to explode. I felt like I needed to go literally into like a facility to help me work through some things. Let's just put
Right.
it that way.
Yeah.
And I just said, I can't keep doing this. I was at the point where I was making is the same amount of money in that job as I was in my consulting business, working that kind of on the side as a side hustle. And I thought, I just can't do this anymore. I can't. I can't.
Right.
So I just decided to, and part of it was I was already writing. I was writing on LinkedIn. So I started writing on LinkedIn, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that. I don't even know exactly, but I was doing it it was therapeutic. It was after a big layoff at an organization I was working for, which actually put me on the whole trajectory I'm on right now. But I started to write and people were like, oh, I love this. And then at some point I got to, I don't know how many articles I'd written, but then people were reaching out to me, can you help my team on customer and employee experience? I used to focus on both of those. So I got to like the second client. I still hadn't had a business yet. I got to like the second client that had come to me for my writing on LinkedIn and finally said, I probably need to incorporate. That's the lawyer in me. I'm like, I probably should legitimize this thing a little bit. So I decided to create, at that point it was Customer Fanatics. Now I've changed the name to Employee Fanatics.
Right. So at that time, I mean, you're in a situation that I think many people find themselves in, or at least are considering or preparing for in the future, which is you're still employed. You are now dabbling and actually starting to work with clients kind of as a side hustle consulting business. How did you manage that? I mean, was it as simple as just like taking time off? Because a lot of people, like, their employment may not allow them to do that, or like what I'm looking for is, what advice would you have for somebody who knows they want to maybe venture out, start their own thing, but they're currently working a full-time job? Is there anything that you did that you think worked really well in terms of like talking to your boss or in your contract, or how do you position to be able to do those two things at one time?
I mean, there wasn't a contract in Colorado. You're at will employees, and so there is no contract. In that particular role, I was really in a really good position because there could be times like every other week I could work 3 10-hour shifts. So I had the ability to do it around that. The other thing is I didn't sleep a lot. So it would be, 11:30 at night and I was writing or doing stuff for client work or emailing people, and things like that. I would do things in my lunch hour. I'd go out in my car and have client calls. I mean, the hustle is real. When we say side hustle, the word hustle, the hustle is real. If you want it, you fight for it and you just find a way to go around. I mean, like I said, I have 4 kids. I was traveling. The business, the company I worked for, the organization was about 45 minutes from my house. So I was traveling there 45 minutes. Then I would have to get off and rush to get a kid from school. And then I would then the next day I could be leaving to go on a trip. I mean, life was crazy. And so I would say, know that the hustle's real, that it takes real hustle, and that you have to be realistic about how much you can take in and what you can do. And then managing, mental health, physical health, all of those things as you're going through that. And so, not most people can't just like quit their job and go consult unless they have saved a lot of money. And so maybe that would be the alternate thing I would say is that if you think you want to do your own thing, start saving a lot so that if you decide you're just leaving and starting, make sure you have a year worth of money there to kind of build up a coffer while you're trying to build the business. But
yeah. And why the hustle? I mean, what was going on inside of you that was driving you to work so much, to have so much dedication? You're getting pulled in multiple different directions. You're probably kind of relinquishing or giving up some time that you could be spending with your kids at that point, but you're grinding. What's going on inside of your mind that's really, telling you to keep doing that?
I mean, I'm grinding because I got to get it from underneath the people who were kind of holding me back. And also I think holding me back from the impact I could have with the work that I do. So because I knew that, I was hyper focused and aware that I needed to get from underneath that and really unleash my own self and all the greatness that was there, right? To be able to have the impact that I needed to have, then that's where the drive was at.
Yeah.
I think the drive, like where the drive is, this whole thing for me as a kid, feeling like I wasn't worthy, like I wasn't good enough. It's always been a big driver for me that I'm constantly out. I'm proving it to, I don't know who, because there's really nobody to prove it to. Prove it to myself. I don't know.
Right.
But that's really the gist of it is making sure
And
that's
is that so? In your book, you talk about this kind of, you growing up. So your mother's white and Jewish, your father's Black and Christian. So within your family kind of ecosystem, you stand out a little bit, right? And felt different. Is that what you're referring to, or was there something else going on when you were younger?
Yeah, it is mostly that part of it. Yes, of just
Yeah.
that's the message that's underneath the surface that you're just not good enough, or that you don't belong, or but those are the kind of things when you have those kind of messages, then it just rings in your head, no matter how much you try to battle it and how much you try to fight it. It just does.
It's so interesting because I see this a lot with many people, who come on the podcast, that there's something that happened early in their lives that's, kind of driven them or got them going down a specific path. And in my case, so I lived in Israel for about 4.5 years when I was a kid, came back to Canada, didn't speak English, didn't know anyone. Like I really felt like an outsider. And so for me, the way that I tried to kind of prove myself was through sports. So I became very focused on athletics and just trying to be the best. But I find that's interesting amongst many people who, it's like you might see a mountain in front of you, but you're still going to climb it. Like you're still going to work to get to the top, even though many people would get up halfway and turn around or just look and go like, no, I don't want to do that. So I find that to be very interesting about you as well. And then the other question I had for you on this, Heather, is, so you had a lot going on. It was a stressful situation, right? Your own admission, like mental state, maybe not the best at that time. You weren't running optimal. So two parts to this. What were you doing at that time to manage the stress? And the second part is looking back, knowing what you know now, what do you think you could have done differently? And I'm really asking because I think a lot of people, even if they're not in the same situation where they're working a full-time job and doing, consulting on the side, even for those who are, doing consulting 100%, whether they are solo independent consultants or they have a team, they just might have a lot going on. They're feeling the stress, they're feeling anxiety. There's just a lot of worry, going on in their minds. What were you doing then? And what advice would you offer to yourself back then and maybe others who might be feeling stressed right now?
Well, I would say two things. One, I actually did take advantage when I could of my organization's like mental health program, where you could like call someone or talk to someone, or just kind of just go see someone, and they had really good benefits. So I would absolutely do that. I did try to work out as much as I could, in between the times, like on lunch hour or whatever it is. I would try to walk a lot, even if I couldn't get to the gym. So I would try to do a lot of that. The other thing is I also took advantage of all the days off, as I said before. So I took advantage of every single one. I wasn't trying to accrue. I was using it as I was earning it, because I knew it was a short-term thing because I was going to be out of there. So that was one thing. I forgot the sub part of it.
Looking back, like what would you maybe have done differently, or what advice would you have for somebody in a similar situation or who's just feeling a lot of stress right now and being pulled in different directions?
Yeah. And then I would say what I would have done, looking back just to my own specific situation, is I would have left earlier. I was holding on because it was really good benefits. And as an solopreneur, that's what I was about to be doing, going out. It not easy to find benefits that would cover the whole family. There's 6 of us. I have 4 kids again. So I had to be really smart. I was being like super responsible, but in retrospect, could have gotten a lot further faster if I'd have left earlier and not waited to kind of get to the point where, I mean, you can kind of imagine if in my side business, I'm making as much as my day job, you probably are imagining I'm working awfully hard to get there.
Right, right.
So that's what I would say. I would have probably just quit the day job earlier and
Yeah.
gone on my consulting way.
I love that. So employee engagement, HR, I mean, some people kind of look at that and go like, these are softer skills. There's the value can be a little bit more intangible. It's not like the work that you do directly increases sales in most people's mind. How do you think about kind of communicating value to your clients and going about creating value in the work that you're doing? Because a lot of people, even if they're not in HR or employee, kind of related work, the value they create might be intangible. They might be doing like research or some other work that isn't hard and tangible. What advice would you have there? And what have you guys been doing in your own company to try and, identify that value, capture that value, communicate that value to your clients and, in the work that you do in your marketing?
Well, I definitely believe in storytelling. So as much as possible, we definitely try to tell stories. We work out case studies and try to present those from as far as connecting a bottom line result to the work that we do. I always believe it's the IX on Fanatics is metrics. So everything that we do, the foundation of it is to get organizations to use data, quantitative and qualitative data, to make informed decisions related to change related and that it impacts employees and leaders. And so that's the position we work from. When we go in, it's like, yep, these are all the things I'm telling you need. Like in my book, The Art of Caring Leadership, it's like, yep, there's all these things we need. It may sound soft, and I give you the ROI part of it, right? Where it's like, there's some actual numbers to it. Let's look at the things we want to track. What does success look like?
Yeah.
And what numbers, what metrics do you have right now that you're either already tracking or that we can easily access? And let's set those up inside of the plan that we put together so that we can continue to track that way. And that way it's not just this squishy and, intangible thing that you talk about, but it actually has results. But the storytelling is huge, and also making people dream a little bit, reflect on their own experiences in the workplace when things were going well. And having them start to think about, what did the leaders look like? What did they do? How did they act? How did your team act around you? When you start to do that, you realize, wow, I had a team. I had a leader who was really supportive. He allowed me a lot of autonomy. He brought the team together. We achieved great things together. So right when you start having them talk through it that way, then they start to go, oh, I get it. That's what we need to be doing too, to make people want to go over and above.
How clear were you on that in the early days of your business? Like, was that from the start, it was very apparent to you that you needed to focus on the metrics and try and make something that might seem to some people a bit more intangible, more tangible, and really focus on the value? Or is this something that kind of evolved for you as you did the work and took on more clients and more projects?
Well, the value proposition obviously has changed over time because it gets more and more pointed with more and more client engagements. However, data, qualitative and quantitative, mostly qualitative, was always the foundation. It's been for years and years, because before I was on the employee side, I was on the customer side. And so all of the employee surveys and customer success numbers and CSAT numbers and things like that were always a North Star that I had to work from, particularly because I reported to the COO or the CFO, that kind of thing. And so as a result, they expected to see that kind of data. Yeah. So I knew that I was always going to be working from that place of needing to convince the COO or the CFO. And so it was always going to be about data. But what I do now, I coach these types of leaders now as well. And with those leaders, I'm always taking them to moving them closer to their heart, so that they work away a little bit from process and numbers and say, yep, we have that. Yep, we know that. And let's talk about the things that aren't like the number, as you talked about, that are not quantifiable on a spreadsheet, but they are in the hearts of the people who stay next to you and do the work you want them to do.
And how does all of that focus on value and metrics influence your pricing strategy and the different offerings that you have? Can you kind of just give us a high level in as much detail as you're able and comfortable to, but in terms of how you guys think about pricing your services and what that looks like?
Yeah. I mean, this is another thing that's evolved. I remember doing probably my first year of consulting, might even been the first 6 months. I put an RFP together for a nonprofit that was out of New York. So I'm assuming, it's a nonprofit, but it is New York. Okay, well, let me go there. So I didn't know, because I was following the lead of another consultant who does this a particular way. She bids hourly. It's based on project, but it's an hourly. So I bid it hourly. And I thought I was bidding a lot. And in the end, I didn't win. And because he really, the gentleman who was kind of the person leading it liked me, he gave me 30 minutes to kind of tell me why. One of them is that he felt like the message, I had like a 27-page proposal and that was too short. That in his mind, it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear as the others that I really understood their business, that I bid it hourly and no one else had ever done that before. It's only been by project. And I was too low. So I had to process this, and I was
So
too
you
low
did
and I was
not
already
win that
high.
project, you said, right?
I
Did
did
not.
not win that project, but
Yeah.
he was kind enough to give me, like,
Yeah.
literally, he sat on the phone for like 30 minutes, and he followed me even after that on social and my newsletter, because I think he kind, there was something that called him to the work and how it presented. But again, it was a whole committee, and so these other people did it, which was fine because it was a really good learning experience for me. After that point, I no longer bid hourly, so hourly doesn't even take place. I never have hourly. And then I sometimes that value is subjective. So sometimes it is like, yes, you put together a detailed proposal and it has things in it that are, I try to, again, always tie a metric or tie an identifiable thing they can track or see what success looks like, again, for them in there so that they can feel good about it. But because it's not hourly and it's project based, and then that's gone up over time,
Right.
because again, once you see your values there, what people are willing to spend and what you can deliver, and your results, your confidence increases, then you feel more comfortable being able to, put bigger numbers out there. And you're like, yeah, this is like this contract, and this is like this contract. Now that I know what this service is, and I think the other thing that becomes real clear, that even again, even as of this year, like through the pandemic and this year, there's so much clarity on where we need to focus as a firm based
Mhm.
upon demand, that, and then you realize where your niche is. And again,
Right.
this is something that it doesn't usually happen right away. Sometimes it does, but it's usually like it evolves over time. You figure out what your niche is. So we've determined, where that's at, and it's our sweet spot for now. It doesn't mean it'll always be that way. That's the other thing, being really flexible about what you might
Yeah.
iterate to, right? But now that we're there, now it's like, this is the thing we do, and we do it uniquely well, and everybody knows that. And so I'm not saying we're gonna be ridiculous. We're gonna be fair in what we charge, but it's not gonna be cheap, and
Right.
but it's gonna be the best, and you're gonna get what you want, and you're gonna get high touch. And that's the other thing we've determined, is that, this is not, we just aren't the kind that we're going to have 100 customers at a time. We are just absolutely, we go deep, we go wide, we know you well, you know us well, you trust us deeply, and we connect, and that's just how it works. And so because we
Mm.
know that, we don't try to replicate any other model.
Right. Well, you're also a bit of like a fortune teller, because you already guessed, you're hitting on my next question already. So that's good. You're setting me up really well here. But what I wanted to point out, which is something very important, I think, for many consultants and many that kind of struggle with this, is that you've now mentioned that your messaging and your offerings evolve. They change over the years. I mean, you've only been doing this for 3.5 years, kind of formally in the business. It's not a lot of time, but you've already been making changes. And I think many people find themselves hesitating to kind of get out of the starting block, to put out a message, to reach out to people, to talk about what they're doing, because they don't have it perfect. Well, perfection doesn't exist, right? It's just about progress. It's just about putting something out there, getting feedback from the marketplace, and adjusting. And so you've obviously been doing that, exceptionally well. But in terms of your offerings, I mean, this is what you were kind of hitting on that I wanted to ask you about, because there are, like in all aspects or all industries or all areas of consulting, there's many consultants that do HR or employee engagement type of work. What steps have you taken? What have you guys been doing? What have you been seeing? And I think this ties into what you just started to mention there, Heather, but as a way to differentiate yourself and to create an advantage or an edge, how do you think about that? And what shifts have you made in your business to really position yourselves so that you're not just the same as others offering similar services?
Yeah, I mean, I think the high touch part, we're very relationship based. Um, so that, and there's also a huge amount of congruence between me as the founder and CEO and everything that gets put out. So like every piece of content, every piece of work, any project we take on, there's a huge amount of congruence with what I initially started the firm for, like the why behind it, and the desire to show care, to make people feel important, to make people feel heard. It's like been the thing that's never gone away. So it's the thing at the beginning that started it, and every single thing we do, we're super clear. It's the North Star. So everything we do just stems from that. So I think having the purpose, the mission, the vision, like that, it's still critical, even as a one person firm, as you start to grow and develop. Um, it becomes clear. And
Can I
then
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second on that. I want to push back a little bit because I think to some people that's going to sound like very kind of wishy-washy. It's like, yeah, have your values, have your vision. Can you make that a bit more tangible for us? Like, what have you been doing? So I can understand, you've written down your vision, your values, you're clear on that, your team is clear on that. And we can talk more about that in a moment, but how does that now connect to your content or to the materials or to your conversations with clients? Can you kind of offer me a bit of a tangible example or two of how you guys have done that?
yeah, think of something like a push and a pull, and like a flow, like a stream that flows, and things just like naturally flow in it. And when you develop that, again, when you just decide for yourself like what your purpose is, so I'm thinking again as a solo consultant. So you're starting in, or you're in it now, and whether you're in it now with 5 people in your firm, when you know what that is and you're super clear, everything flows up the river in that very consistent direction. So that means conversations with clients. When clients could be being at a crossroads with their business. I had one where there was something going on with their business just recently, and they needed to pause on doing a survey and a round of listening sessions because it was, from a strategic perspective, they needed to hold off for a second. So I wasn't like pushing them because we need to listen. We need to go do it now. I didn't do that because it was about what the client needed and what their business direction was. So I needed to pause for I needed to kind of act in congruent. What we do, we create cultures of listening at Employee Fanatics. We help organizations create a culture of listening. Sometimes we actually execute upon it, and sometimes we help them put the things in place to create the cultures of listening that make people feel heard, listened to, and basically respected, and important in the work they do. That they have meaningful work, and all of those things just stem from listening. So we're really hyper clear and focused on listening, and everything we do stems from that. And so I think, and so that, like I said, any piece of content, anything that we put out, any video, any client interaction, if it's not me listening, like they're saying something to me and I have not truly heard them, they're going to know it. I'm going to be then totally inauthentic with what it is we put out there. We're telling you, we help you create the cultures of listening, yet I haven't listened to you. I'm trying to make you go in a different direction. I'm trying to sell you on this or that. Now, having said that, as a consultant that has a focus on listening, when I listen, I am listening to uncover new opportunities inside that organization. So, it's to meet their need, and it's obviously to continue to meet our needs as consultants. We have to continue to feed the beast as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's helpful, but I have found that this is a lot of fun when you can be authentic and congruent with what you say you value. And that's the thing I would say would be the most important. So we do listening sessions, employee listening sessions for an engagement perspective. We also do it on the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space. Those are confidential sessions we'll do for organizations, usually following some kind of big survey that we've also helped them aggregate an action plan around, but not always. We help them with the entire culture of listening in the journey of listening, because it's a multi-step process, and most organizations fall short. So we help them not fall down. We kind of hold their hand and make sure that they know exactly the steps to take and how to bring it back full circle, so that team members really do feel like they're heard.
Right. Heather, you have a personal website. You also have then the Employee Fanatics website. Can you just kind of talk us through the reason for having those two separate? I mean, they're linked, but two separate kind of online properties. What's the reason for that?
We actually have 4 now. It's kind
Okay.
of crazy. One of them, though, is my book. So it's like the Art of Caring Leadership.com is its own book site. And we made that decision. We'll just wanted to have it as a standalone. I respected a lot of people who had done that before and their book had done well. So I thought, let me just have that separate identity. Great for SEO. Employee Fanatics was all just one. So I started off with just one, didn't have the separate website. But because it's Employee Fanatics and not Heather Younger Consulting, I wanted to separate me out from the company, because my goal is to grow it and to scale it and not have it just be about me. I want to be able to go do other things and not just have it all be Heather based. So, so that's the reason why I decided to create the Heather Younger speaking site, so that could be its own separate standalone thing.
Got it. And at what point did you start building a team? You're 3.5 years into this. Like, take me back in the timeline. When did you bring on the first employee or team member, and who were those people?
Yeah, I mean, the very first person I brought in probably within 6 months. So it's like in 2000, probably the very beginning of 2018, I brought in a VA. So she was a VA from the Philippines, who, by the way, is still with me in different capacities now. But she was just like the doer of all things. She was just amazing. She could do so many things. So she's been with me since the beginning of 2018, and she stays. Then I added on more and more. I probably had, at the height, probably 5 or 6 contractors. So between VAs, multiple VAs, and then so I have somebody now who does my podcast editing, and because I have a podcast as well, Leadership with Heart. I have now I have someone. So in the last year, I brought on 2 employees, and one is kind of like my right-hand person who just knows can do everything and knows everything and is amazing. And the other person's more of like our community manager. So she manages all the communities that I start. And the spaces all over the place. So she does that, which is awesome. I needed that. Then I have an outsourced marketing director who she acts as a marketing director. So she keeps us all on track. She makes sure the marketing stuff is, all consistent. We have a strategic plan. It's all those things. So,
and at what point did you feel like you need to bring those people on? Like, was it based on your schedule and capacity? Was it based on hitting a certain level of revenue? How did you kind of go about thinking, when should I bring in these people? I mean, the VA makes sense, right? I don't think much talk has to happen around that. It's, your schedule is busy. You want someone to take care of scheduling your emails or administrative stuff. But what are those other roles? How did you kind of think about bringing in more contractors and then 2 employees? When did that decision kind of take place?
Well, the contractors were like little by little by little. It was like, well, I have a podcast, and there's absolutely I am not a technical person. I do the relationship stuff very well. It's my forte. So that's the stuff I do. I put myself in my strength zone, and I don't put myself in the place I'm not strong. For a couple of years, I was doing all of my own blogs. I mean, from scratch. And I have at that one point for about 8 or 9 months, I was doing 2 blogs a week because I had moved, I'd rolled out the Heather Younger site. So then I had two different audiences in a way.
Right.
So I've been super intentional about when I bring on a new person. It's always for a specific purpose. And yes, the revenue has to be there. And what happened with me is during the pandemic, because we do a lot of listening, the DEI listening stuff really started to scale up because of George Floyd and everything that happened.
Right.
So I knew I had to start partnering with outside consultants that do things that maybe I didn't do. I love collaborating and partnering. So I don't do what I don't do, and I do what I do well. And I want to make sure I delegate and like bring in and collaborate with other people who do what they do well, so that we can really, complement one another.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much it. But revenues, I mean, I always say, like, I've created it. This thing is a beast. Like, I have a marketing machine, and the work I do has to feed the beast. So,
right. And the marketing that you're doing, I mean, right now, if you look over the last 12, 18, 24 months, from a marketing perspective, what's working best for you guys right now to bring in, new opportunities, new leads, fill the pipeline, create great conversations? Is there one or 2 specific kind of marketing tactics or approaches that are working well for you?
Well, I mean, here's what I would say to anybody. It's consistency is key. And it's not always the size that matters, is what you do with it. You hear that a lot, right? In a different space, but it's true here that whatever you start with, let's say you got 100 followers or 50 followers, whatever you've got on your email or whatever, you nurture those relationships, those connections, and so that you grow and you grow and you grow. And so I think just the fact that we've been so consistent, probably for the last 6 years, of just nurture. And it was me, I say we, it's me. And then it's just been, now it's we in the last year, where it's just been nurture each and every one. And that's a differentiator for me. It really is. The high touch thing, the way I roll through life, is a differentiator. It's a scaling of the mountain thing you talked about. Not everybody's going to want to be that high touch. It's exhausting for a lot of people. I'm not saying it's never exhausting for me, but this is just my.
How do you do it? Can you just kind of take us through, so before you brought a team on, what were you doing when you say high touch and outreach and nurture? I mean, of course, so you could post an article on LinkedIn or your website blog. You could send out a newsletter. Is there anything else that you were doing that you feel was really critical to, kind of sustaining or taking your pipeline from a place of being okay to being much better?
Well, I mean, I think it's all the things. It's just all. And when my marketing director came on, she's like, I'm really impressed by how you're doing all the things. And what I needed help on, the reason why I brought her on was I needed more focus, and I needed to be more strategic with all the things. But all the things is what got my brand built where it was. Like, so I think that's again, there's a level of intentionality. None of this was a mistake. There was no accidents, or none, not one accident. Now, having said that, I don't control the universe. So things do happen, things come along, right? For example, the George Floyd thing, I didn't control that, but we were already set up to be the ones who listen closely to employees and have a process and an infrastructure in place to do that. So it just happened to be, that's just how it worked.
Yeah.
I would say one of the things I did do for on the speaking side of the consulting practice, right, is I decided to hire a speaker office, so they manage my entire speaking business. That way I didn't have to be tied down. So I got to the point where, like, in the pandemic, I was just like writing this book. My head was kind of spinning, and I said, I've got to do something to let go of the details, because I cannot scale. I cannot get to where I want to go unless I let go of the details, which means I'm going to have to let go of some of the revenue share.
Mhm.
Right. That means there's less money that might be fully staying in my pocket. I had to let go of that and just say, get more comfortable with that. So yeah, that's where I was at.
And how do you feel now that you've done that? Now that you've, invested back into the business, which means that your profit margin might be less. You might at times be making less than you were before, long term, right? Or as things move along, the goal is obviously that even though your margin might be lower, the overall profit still coming in to your account or into the business is growing. But how do you kind of feel about that now, looking back, and any advice you'd offer somebody who's kind of at that position where, yeah, they want to bring on another person or invest into some other area, but they're hesitant because they're looking, at it as a cost, not as an investment. Any thoughts on that?
Um, from a sanity perspective, again, having 4 kids and all the stuff that I have going on, I just had to do it. And so I think about what it is you're giving up by not doing it. Like, what is it that you could be doing, or what kind of success could you have if you would take the step forward? And maybe it's not doing a full-time person. I mean, here, what I discovered is, after all these years of working with contractors, is that they work with lots of other people, as we do, right? As contractors, as consultants, we work with lots of other people, which means now we're not wholly focused on their business and they're not wholly focused on ours. And because I knew it was time to take it to the next level in the business, I needed to have all hands on deck. So for me, the 2 full-time employees were absolutely necessary. Because I know they're focused on my work.
Yeah.
And I just needed that. And that was just, it was almost like, what can you control? What can you influence? And I knew in that case, I could influence for sure them, because now I'm paying them a salary as their full-time employees. I could control my decision to do that. There's very little we can control in life. And I plan to control and influence all I can. So.
Yeah. I love that already, within 3.5 years, you're already thinking about kind of the next steps in the future of the business, that it sounds like you may not be 100% dedicated to the business in the long term. You want to look at other opportunities, which is really smart. What have you been doing to, what steps have you been taking when you think about scaling your expertise, right? So a lot of consultants are held back or don't, leap into that, or don't kind of move forward with that, because they think and they hear from clients that, the client wants them, they want their brain, their mind. And so for whatever reason, it might be that, it might be they just don't want to make investments into bringing in other people. But what would you say, first of all, like you've been doing more specifically when you think about the future of your business and, from a systems perspective, processes, team, how to scale more efficiently, effectively? What have you kind of been doing in that area, Heather?
I've really ramped up my collaborations, and like I was saying before, bringing people in as consultants that might come along. Like, we'll even do kind of co-marketing with my firm, and then just them as individuals, because maybe they aren't as established as my firm is. And so we'll bring them in because they have a skill set I don't, and I don't need to have it. So that's the other thing. I don't feel like I need to have every skill set, because I don't want the end game to be all about me. When it comes to Employee Fanatics, I need to make sure other people can come. So it's collaborating with people who can augment. I do believe in building our skills. And so during the pandemic, I became a certified diversity professional. So I got that certification, and I may do more over time. We'll have to see. We'll see. Sometimes it's like, I'm going to do just what I need to do. And then I don't need to do more, because I can basically outsource that.
Right.
And so that's a part of it, is just getting comfortable with clients, seeing other people. I'm going to be honest, though, that I'm very particular who it is I partner with. Their values have to be super aligned with mine, and how they show up has to be super. There again, a lot of alignment there, so that if for some reason I can't make it and they show up, they're there to do the thing with the client, like listening sessions or whatever it is that they're going to presenting. I would need to feel very comfortable, because there is such high touch relationship oriented type of thing, I do have a certain level of control. I control that, what that looks like specifically. And it's because it's still my baby in the end. I'm not just gonna be like, here, go take this and go off in the wild blue yonder. You know what I mean? I'm not going to do
Right.
that. I'll be like, here is specifically what I would love to collaborate with you on right here. Right.
Right.
And it's contracted with a master service agreement, and we've got NDAs, and we have all in place. And it's just because it takes a lot of time to build this up. For those who are listening, you know this to be true. And so you need to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed before you kind of unleash other people onto the clients you've worked so hard to have.
Yeah. So it's still early days for you, right? In terms of kind of scaling this out and bringing people on. What
Yeah.
lessons though have you learned as you've been engaging with others and collaborating with consultants? Is there any mistakes that you've made, or just think like, lessons learned and, oh, I could have done that differently. Oh, I didn't have that agreement. I didn't use that. What are some of the best practices from that perspective that you think would be important for people to know?
Hmm. I think like you said, I'm early enough in it that I haven't had any issues at this point. Only thing I would say is, because I kind of have a marketing mind, I'm always like, how do I make it so that even though they're on their own and I don't really, they still are aligned with me. So for example, like there's a person I brought on for training a training that I didn't do during the pandemic, that I wasn't trained to do, but I knew she did it well because I'd seen her before do it. So then we created kind of a one sheet that had both she and I, and created that as a team approach.
Mhm.
Even though it was fully disclosed, the person was not full-time in my business, but it still helped. That was a best practice for me, and I'll be doing that each time there's another person I'm looking to do
Mm.
something with here. And so then it just presents more of a
Yep.
team, stronger front than just
Right.
like 5 or 6 people coming from all these different places that don't seem to have anything in common.
Yeah. And so in doing that, so you create that one sheet, right? You kind of gave us the positioning around it. What do you do with the one sheet? What do you
Well,
send
that
it,
would
like
go to the
send it to
clients
people,
who are
or?
interested. Yeah, so that wouldn't be, that's not like I'm not just sitting there doing like a cold call or a cold type of email
Right.
with people. That would be clients who are interested. So because they may come to me I may talk to them on like DEI listening sessions, and they might want to have a different type of training. And I'll say, well,
Right.
okay, oh yeah, I have someone on my team who can do that. And then because I know I have the person in mind and their openness and willingness to do it, and I've seen what they can do, I'll bring that person in
Yeah.
as a part of Employee Fanatics to do that. And
Right.
again, when I do it, it ends up being in a proposal where it's a team focus. Um, I mean, I think there's probably been little mistakes that I can't even think about, and I'm sure I'll be making plenty of others as we go. I would have to say again, being consistent, having a plan, revisiting the plan, because I am a doer. I scale mountains all day, all the time. That's just what I do. And so having like somebody on your team that says, let's stop scaling for a moment. Let's go back to the base, review the plan, right? Before we
Yeah.
start scaling some more. And so having that kind of person around you, whether it's a contractor, somebody who's outside that helps you, is good.
Awesome. Well, Heather, I want to really thank you for coming on here today. Heather Younger, everyone, The Art of Caring Leadership is your new book. I want to make sure that people can learn more about your book, more about your work, everything you have going on. Where's the best place for them to go and kind of, is there a home base for all that?
I would say check me out on LinkedIn. So just look up Heather Younger on LinkedIn. That's probably a good one to just, if you want to continue to follow. And then as it relates to the book, the best place is just the art of caring leadership.com. It'll give you access to kind of pretty much, you'll be able to find me everywhere else if you go there. And there's a lot of free downloadables and infographics and stuff there too. So it's kind of fun.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Heather, again, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.